Hi, Seton Prep colleagues. I hope everybody's having an awesome summer. I want to take you through the 2021 College Placement Report. But before I get into it, I want to first send out a few thank yous. I want to thank the entire community. This year was tough. I think you all know that we turned our program, like many of you turned your programs, upside down. So I want to thank you for all of your support that you gave the students this year. I couldn't be, happier with how it turned out, and much of that is because of the support that I've had from, colleagues, the support all of our college counselors have had across the board from faculty and staff. So thank you for that. I also want to send a thank you out to Dave Schneider, who was integral in helping me to get better, on the tech side with YouTube and screencasts and live streams and all of this stuff. So Dave, thank you so much. Without you picking up all my phone calls, we definitely would not have communicated as well with the students and met them where they are. So where were the trends this year versus last year? The class of 2020, most of the work was done for them. Once COVID hit in March, the biggest thing for them was in regular decision when schools released their final decisions. Some of them weren't able to visit some of the schools that they got into, but most of the work and the program itself was about a year and a half in the making. So they got out okay. The class of 2021 had a very difficult process, compared to what is traditional. But I feel like we did a great job meeting them where they are overall. The hardest thing for 2021 was list building. We tell them you need to develop a criteria. Hey, I really want to apply to schools that are 10,000 students or more in the Northeast or on the Eastern Seaboard, have biomedical engineering, and have traditional campuses. So it's very easy for us then to kind of pair to that and say, look at these 6, look at these 7 colleges. It's hard for a student to develop a criteria when they can't visit places. So that was the biggest obstacle for the class of 2021. The other thing was things that they really couldn't control, which was where the landscape is. From a statistical standpoint, and then if you look at all other parts of it, this was the most difficult year ever for a student to apply to college. And that kind of trickled through for our guys. So we had app counts across the board skyrocketing across the country. And when app counts increase, that allows colleges to be more selective, which some students fall out of favor. It wasn't crazy for me to be on calls with colleges and have them tell me that there were 20 to 30% increases in app counts. And you had even some schools, I'll use MIT as an example, that in early action, their app counts went up 62%. That is an enormous, enormous jump. Why did this happen? Test optional was a piece of it. Students couldn't test, so all colleges had to go test optional. So a lot of those students that maybe had terrific transcripts but didn't have test scores and would have shied away from applying in the past, maybe they did apply this time. So that was a big piece of it. The other thing is a growing trend over the years, which is students are applying to more and more schools. And especially our guys are targeting some of the most competitive schools in the country, as are everyone across, as are all, schools, public and private, across the country. So when it becomes harder, we want our students to get what we feel they deserve. So instead of applying and targeting maybe 4 of those schools, maybe they'll target 6 of them, because we truly believe that they should land at some of these schools, but it's becoming harder and harder. The job certainly does not get easier. So I'm going to start with this summary tab, and I want you to first look at this 234 number with our students and look above it. Every single student in the class, with the exception of 1, had 4-year options. Okay, so we had even these 2-year college students that are right here, and our students taking gap years, which was, only one of them truly didn't apply to colleges and will apply for next year for their own reasons. So when you look at the overall class, close to 100%, 99.5+% had 4-year options. When you look down here at this area, I want you to focus in on 6 acceptances per student. This is spot on in the way that we advise. Our approach is for them to have good outcomes, but also have a great process. And that means getting a certain amount of yeses. When we advise students, we tell them you should have 2 likely schools on your list where you're well above what the school is looking for. And then we tell them you should have 4 probables where you're in a strong section for them. You're in a good spot overall, okay? But it's a little bit tighter, but you're generally in an area with a majority here, yes. And then after that, we have them really hunt and try to get into some of these schools that are possible for them or stretches in some way. So the 6 acceptances shows our guys are having, great outcomes, but great processes. An example of a bad process, a student gets into one school they really want to, but they get no from 9 others. That's not a great senior year. So we do look at the softer side of this, and especially not just the mental health aspects, but, what they're dealing with and what they're going through and trying to make sure that they have a great senior year overall. Another notable piece to look at is 12 students attending Northeastern. It's commonplace to hear people outside of the building and you say, oh, what was the hot school, so to speak? Well, I could say for Seton Hall Prep over the past 2 years, to have 20 students attend Northeastern is an enormous number. We're not very concentrated. So whatever Northeastern is doing with our students, apparently they're doing extremely well. So if we go to this summary by student tab, there's a couple things I want to draw attention to. This gives you everything. It shows you basically every single student, where they're attending, where they were GPA-wise, what acceptances and options they have. It illustrates that not always what you would think or where you would think they would go is where they go. There are many different reasons students go to different colleges. All right. The main trend to look at here is also early decision. All right. So let's take an example. Well, actually, for early decision, it means that obviously you are you're attending if admitted. All right. Now, what colleges do is they tend to book anywhere between 40 and 50% of their entire class in early decision with these students that want it. In the early decision pools of applicants, the pools are smaller. Okay, so there's a better statistical chance. I'll give you an example of Vanderbilt. In Vanderbilt, in early decision, over the past few years, if you blend it together, it's probably about a 24 to 30% chance of a student being admitted in a smaller applicant pool. Then when you go into regular decision for Vanderbilt, they will accept between 4 and 6%. And they're only looking for 4 and 6% of those admits out of a lot more applicants, and they only need to fill about 50% of their class. So for a lot of our guys, if you look at these ED, it's really a lot of students that they said, I want this, I'm going for it, and they got it, and their process was over. All right, where some of our students decided to stretch it out. There are going to be students every year that will get in an early decision that if they applied in regular decision, they would not. That's the landscape that we live in right now. And the other thing that I've said to most students is, this is not like the 80s and 90s. When it comes down to it, you can take the most difficult curriculum at your school and have a perfect transcript. That gets you on the dance floor for about 40 to 50 schools in this country. That doesn't say that you're going to get a yes. Then they look at everybody else's essays, supplemental essays, interviews, and every other piece of the puzzle. If you go to the next tab here, the admit by acceptance rate, what this shows you, acceptance rate is the amount of students that they're admitting out of the total app count. All right, so I put here an example of if a college has 10 applicants and they accept 4, that's a 40% acceptance rate. But what this says here and illustrates is the lowest acceptance rate admit that a student has. So we're seeing how did we do, by student. The other thing that you can look at here is in each quartile, I gave notable admits. All right. So this gives you an idea of the parity across the class. A lot of our students are accessing schools, in the 3rd and 4th quartile. that would be really good for a lot of schools in their first quartile. So it shows that we're trying to push to get them the best that we possibly can in terms of, colleges that they can access overall. I always say we want to make them shine, when they're borderline. That's really what it comes down to, and that's where the faculty support comes in, their essay support comes in. Everything we're trying to get everything from good to great, great to excellent, and excellent to, magnificent. That's really what the culture of the program is all about, right? So if you look down, this is end of quartile 1, end of quartile 2, 3, and then 4. All right. So you can kind of go through and see what was the acceptance rate, the lowest acceptance rate admit per student overall. Right. If you go into accepts by college, you're able to take a look at across the board where the accepts were happening, how many. You look at the Penn State with 52. It's always a high app count for us and a high amount of admits. But this whole file, or this whole tab, shows that we have a lot of parity across the board. We have a lot of balance. We partner with schools across the country that want to partner with us. So we're trying to have our students keep a wide lens. We do not want them to be, concentrated. There are a lot of schools in the landscape that will partner with us, which means basically that they will have constant communication. There are schools, namely some of the most competitive schools, that they really are trying to talk less and less with us because they do not want independent schools to have what they call now unfair access. Their view is it should be on the student. It's not about where they go. It's just about what the student's file looks like. So that's another piece of the puzzle. We'll talk, constantly with some most competitive schools, but others we will never have really any contact at the admissions counselor or level. If you look at matriculation by college, you'll see that there's only 9 schools where we have 4 or more students. I'm sorry, more than 4 students attending. So really the rest of our class is concentrated with maybe 1 a school, 2 a school, 3 a school, which is good. We want to have a breadth. We want our students to look pretty much everywhere. The way I say it is it's just like high school. There's a lot of great places out there. Right? If you look at matriculation by state, I've highlighted already this area, which shows, outside of Indiana, which is a notable, that's a large number for Indiana, this is a pretty good display of where our kids traditionally are comfortable with. They usually will say, all right, well, the majority will say, I'm good with the northeastern seaboard and down to North Carolina, South Carolina, or Florida. So this is a pretty good display of a lot of our students' comfort levels in terms of applying. If you look at by major, you'll see that the overwhelming majority of our students are looking to study something in management or something in STEM. There's 140 students that declared to us that that's what they were aiming to study. And that doesn't even take into account this College of Arts and Sciences Undecided, where there will be students that are going to be studying something in the sciences. So I think that as faculty that are looking at this to see where the students are heading, that's an enormous number. That's 140 out of 234. And you could probably add in a sprinkling after that are doing something in management or something in the STEM fields, which also includes social sciences. The next 2 tabs are an analysis of 2020 and 2021, and it's 2 years and 2 classes where we're talking about how the students are accessing the U.S. News Top 60 national universities and liberal arts colleges. So if you look, main things to look at, our app counts are going to change every single year, okay? So you will have some years where, for example, we had a bunch of students apply to one college one year. Well, maybe the next we won't have as many. All right, so there is some subjectivity behind this. But if you look across the board, you're seeing that we are really accessing pretty much all of, or the majority of the most competitive, national universities and liberal arts colleges. All right. So if you look at this tab for special program invites, there's a lot of different things that colleges will do to make themselves of value for a student. So you take some of these honors programs and bachelor's, master's programs. A lot of them have money tied to them. So what'll happen is a college will say, "Hey, we really have, we can offer you. You can graduate in 3 years. You get all these different perks, and we're going to cost 25." Where let's say that is Fairfield that's doing it, they may say, "We know you're probably going to be able, or you have a strong chance to access a school like Yale, and we're going to offer you this. What's a value to you and your family?" So I think it's good across the board to see, some of the different programs that our students were able to get outside of just outright admission. So I'm going to stop there. I hope this is giving you a sense of, the class of 2021 and their strengths and all the outcomes that they've had that we feel great about. I can't say enough about the resilience of the class. I thought that the class of 2020 was the best class in terms of outcomes across the board that we had since my tenure, here started, and 2020 is pretty much right on par. And if you take into account what they had to do and what they had to go through to get that, it's absolutely stellar. All right. So I hope everybody enjoys this. I hope it's insightful, and then enjoy the rest of your summer. All right. Go Pirates.